What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's Top 3. Today, we're going to be taking a look at 3 of the latest and greatest releases to the playing card market. Dude, Steve, I'm really excited for this week. Even though we don't have a theme like the past couple weeks, I think we have some really great decks this time.
Yeah, that's the theme, man. Great decks.
It's a good way to look at it. Like, I think the cool thing about this week is I think the style of all 3 of these decks is all over the spectrum. We have some really cool artistic decks. We have some really cool everyday carry decks. They're just fun, man.
Yeah, definitely. And the tuck boxes are different on all 3 of them, which is really
cool. No, I'm really excited for this one. So, you ready to bring in number 3 here?
Yes, number 3 is Legacy of Legerdemain by Mike Davis. It is printed by USPCC on premium crush stock. It is a print run of 2,500 and retails for $12.
Nice, man. Absolutely gorgeous deck. Let's check this thing out here.
Yeah, let's do it. The tuck box is standard white and black. It is very third eye-ish type design, you know, kind of Big Brother-ish. It is really funky arcade type font on the sides. You know, I kind of get that arcade vibe.
Yeah, I could see this being on like an 80s pinball machine.
Oh, dude, totally. Yeah. Especially with the star. It definitely, that's the perfect example of, I don't even know. But
the design work is cool,
I really yeah, no, it definitely is. And normally I'm not a huge fan of monochromatic, but it definitely works here with the white and black in that central eye in the middle. I wonder if that will add to some cool cardistry movement.
Could be a nice smaller central element there, circular element. And I think the monochromatic works as well just because it's so simple. It's not overly detailed there, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, fun little dual jokers. I have no idea what they're doing, but it kind of reminds me of Ziggy without the wall.
I think they're wizards.
Yeah, wizards. They have pretty small pips, definitely arranged differently than your standard deck of cards.
I love the blue substitution for the traditionally black courts.
Yeah, this also gives me kind of an out of play vibe.
Yeah, I could see that a little bit. The indices and pips are extremely small, which also kind of, you know, harkens to some of the older illusionist decks we used to see as well with the really small fonts there. But it actually works because it gives a lot more space on the card for this artistic styling, which I really like.
Yeah, and I like the full-blown port cards. You know, there's not too much white space on the card, and I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, these are all pretty much mini canvases. You might as well utilize the space as much as possible, and Mike did a really good job with this one here. I really do enjoy that whole, like, void space that comes through. It is a really kind of minimalist design, which looks really nice.
Right, and it does come with a double backer and a blank face card.
Very nice, man. So something that can be used as a magic deck as well as an everyday carry or for playing poker if you really want it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much magic you'd use just because it's the court cards are a little different than we're used to seeing, but it can definitely be used for, you know, game of poker and stuff like that.
And as you'd expect, being USPCC, premium crushed stock handles and fans like an absolute dream.
Yeah, handled very well.
Yeah, I really do dig the styling of that deck. I like the minimalist kind of monochromatic elements that run through the entirety of the deck. A lot of times, especially with standard or standard-esque courts, one of the things you see is a monochromatic back design, monochromatic tuck, and then these bright colors, these bright blues and reds and yellows on the front of the deck. So this one to me really stood out as being very cool.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of monochromatic all over the board, but they did a good job doing this.
I think it's because it's airy still, you know, there isn't too much shading to it. It's really just very minimalist line work. So that monochromatic aspect isn't overly done. It's not trying to have too much depth where color and contrast would have helped a little bit more. So I think it really did work nicely.
Yeah.
Before we jump into number 2, why don't you guys make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel real quick.
Yeah, and don't forget to ring the bell so you will be reminded of our next video.
So coming in at number 2 this week, we have the Jetsetter Playing Cards Lounge Edition Terminal Teal in their Luxury Edition. This deck is printed by Expert Playing Cards on an unspecified stock and is part of a 1,000 deck print run. The standard edition retails for $12.99, and this luxury edition that we're taking a look at retails for $34.99. Ready to check it out, Steve?
Let's do it.
So I gotta say, man, I absolutely love the color of this tuck, and I think one of the really cool things about the luxury edition is actually the foil and the UV spotting that is used to create a texturing on the tuck box itself. Also being made by Expert Playing Cards, this is actually a synthetic tuck box, which means it's going to have a lot more durability than the standard paper tuck boxes that you may get from other printing houses. But this deck really is made to be an everyday carry. Maybe not the luxury edition, which maybe at that retail price point stays home a little bit more, but the standard is definitely a everyday carry there. And
it's for first class
there
users.
You go, man. Definitely a first class deck. I love that foil on the deck, and I know Paul had some real interesting experiences there trying to get that foil to not pop through the front of the deck. So these really had a lot of hands-on detailing built into them, which I think is beautiful to see.
Yeah, I love that color. That's definitely one of my favorite colors right now.
I think he's going to be hard-pressed to find another color for these that's as good looking. So you can also see here you have the boarding pass Joker there, which Joker ad card kind of similar there. Then you have the standard Jetsetter Ace of Spades, which I absolutely love, just the minimalist but clean style that Paul uses for these decks. For the most part, the deck is standard across the board, other than some recoloring, which we can see again a gorgeous teal on these core cards with a nice silver accenting and some really nice black to it. These things,
those colors together are just phenomenal.
They really are, man. A larger than usual central pip on the Ace of Diamonds there and all the other aces. And then we have a pretty standard coloring on the diamonds ports there. The gold is a little bit of a swap out, but dude, the clubs and spades just win it for me on this deck. This thing is beautifully done, especially for such a standard deck of cards.
Yeah, I mean, he really did a great job.
Yeah, I like how you must have played with this so the two Jokers are just randomly in the deck. But as you can see, the Jokers maintain that same style of the ad card we saw earlier with the boarding pass, which is something that Paul always does with these Jetsetter cards, and I think adds really a fun little aviation touch on top of the aviation theme to the deck itself. And then this, again, I really enjoy the central pips being larger than usual, even though they're still standard. I think they just stand out a little bit nicer.
I agree. I like taking up more terrain on that card rather than such small central pips for the aces.
And then being printed by Expert Playing Card, Expert's really known for a lot of their really advanced technology in their printing, but one of the things that does stand out is the decks do need a little bit more break-in than most other decks you're going to get from somewhere like Cardists or USPCC. With that in mind, though, and as you saw in the video, it did handle beautifully. It fanned really well as well. There was a little bit of a spread issue in the fan, but that, again, just kind of works out over time. They really are great decks, and from, you know, some of the best decks out there that people really love once broken in usually come from Expert Playing Cards.
Yeah, they last a long time, actually. I've been playing around with an Expert deck for, you know, probably 2-3 months now, and still fans beautifully, but it does take a little bit to break in and get used to that thicker stock.
Yeah, and they do have a newer cardistry stock out now that's a little bit thinner. We've seen that on some of the King's Wild Project decks. I'm still not sure how that handles, all things considered, but is a very nice and kind of a little bit closer to the feel of a standard Cardists or USPCC stock.
Yeah, it'll be good to check one of those out.
No doubt, man. So, Steve, you ready for number one?
Number one. Yes, I'm ready.
Let's bring it home, man. Let's do this.
Number one is the Avengers deck from Theory11. Nice. It is, of course, an unspecified print run, probably 50,000 or 100,000, who knows? You know, it retails for $9.95, and it is printed on premium stock.
Nice, man. Let's check this thing out. I'm excited to see this deck.
Tyler, this is by far one of the most beautiful tuck boxes I've seen in a very long time.
No doubt.
That purple holographic foil is gorgeous. I was definitely not. I was literally speechless, but I had no idea it was this beautiful in person. You know, I've seen pictures and Obviously, light plays a big part in photos, but
It looks
I mean, it is
beautiful,
what it
man.
is. Yeah. In Theory11 fashion, you open up the deck and you get a monochromatic back, which I think is definitely a pretty color. And I would have liked to have seen it a little darker, but it has definitely some fun elements from the Avengers characters on the back, kind of littered throughout the circles.
Nice.
Handles beautifully, like any other Theory11 deck. It is a little stiffer, than your premium crushed, I felt, but handles beautifully.
Yeah, being just a standard premium stock, it's really built to hold up for a long time. It's not as soft as that crushed out the box, but still is going to handle and really be really usable out of the box. Dig the ad cards.
There's some
nice.
Yeah, cool ad cards. They kind of threw me off a bit. I opened it up. I'm like, whoa.
Nice. And then you got two Jokers here showing Loki and Thanos, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
Or Loki's armory and helm there, but very cool.
Yeah. This Ace of Spades kind of reminds me of a Chinese coin.
So I think it's supposed to be the amulet that Doctor Strange wears. That would be my guess.
Dude, I've seen all the movies, but I'm not totally keyed up on all of these Avengers characters in symbology.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the line work and the style of artwork for this is very similar, I think, to some of the decks we've seen coming out of Theory11's collaborations, really. So similar to the Star Wars deck, similar to the James Bond 007 deck. But I think people who like Theory11 really enjoy that artwork style. And I think going into it, knowing what to expect, this deck is just gorgeously done.
Yeah, it's very similar. Like you said, I love that Black Panther card. Like you said, it comes from Ty Matson design, creative team. And it is very, very similar to that Star Wars deck. I would definitely have liked to have seen maybe a little bit of a different style than that deck, just to kind of
differentiate it a little bit.
Differentiate. Yeah, but I mean, it's super cool. It's always cool seeing those nostalgic, decks of cards that we run into. Spider-Man, who I've always loved my whole life.
Really interesting to see too the small indices and corner pips, yet on all of the courts that larger than usual secondary pip there, which I kind of like. I think this deck really just looks and handles beautifully. The one thing that always falls short for me, and I think a lot of people agree on this one, is, again, it would be nice to see a smattering of color in a Theory11 back design at some point. But Theory11 is great at what they do, and their game is really bringing interesting decks and interesting collaborations at extremely affordable prices. You don't land a series of decks into Target unless you know what you're doing. And with that in mind, like, easily #1 this week, that purple foil on the tuck box is absolutely breathtaking. And
yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and once you get inside the deck, it's what you would expect from Theory11. I think a lot of times there's people out there who see the tuck and expect so much more from Theory11, but anyone who's been in the game for more than a couple weeks, I feel like, realizes you get what you get with Theory11 for $9.95. That's an absolute steal for this deck. You'd be hard-pressed to find many other decks using such beautiful foil on the outside of the tuck for $9.95.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know that that's what they do. They're not really appealing to, they're not trying to appeal to the collector's market. They want to sell decks of cards to as many people as possible, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and all things considered, I mean, at the end of the day, if they sell these mostly to Avengers fans aren't going to be looking for foil on the cards and metallic inks and things like that. Like, they did a really great job with this deck, and again, being a premium stock, it's going to be a fun deck that you can pull out at a poker night sometime. That's one of the cool things about it.
I totally agree. It's fun.
Well, thank you everyone for checking out this week's top 3. Let us know in the comments down below what decks you're excited to be getting in the coming weeks, and make sure to like and subscribe.
Peace.